Please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. They say the rich do everything with style, even betrayal. When my billionaire husband invited me to an exclusive dinner at our favorite 5-star rooftop restaurant, I thought it was his way of making amends. After all, he had been distant lately. Cold. Too many business trips. Too many late-night texts he claimed were about mergers. I dressed carefully that night, not because I wanted to impress him, but because I needed to look composed, for what I already suspected was coming. But even I wasn't prepared for how cruelly he played his hand. The waiter brought champagne. He toasted to new beginnings. And then, as the sun dipped over the skyline and the city lights came alive below us, he gestured behind me and said with a smirk, "Darling, meet my new love." I turned slowly. And when I saw her, young, smug, and wearing the diamond necklace I once owned, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I had come prepared. I reached into my purse, pulled out the envelope, and laid it gently beside his plate. "Sign these," I said calmly, "and tell your new love she can also help pay for your mistakes. And now, let me take you back. Because this betrayal didn't start tonight. From the outside, we were the perfect couple. Frank Edward, billionaire tech mogul, media darling, and self-made success. And me? Olivia Bennett Edward. Former law student turned philanthropist wife. The magazines loved to call us New York's power pair. But no one ever saw what happened when the cameras stopped flashing. When we met, I was working 2 jobs to pay off student loans. Frank swept in like a storm, charming, intense, and generous beyond belief. He paid off my debts before I could protest. He proposed 6 months later with a diamond the size of a raindrop. And I said yes, maybe too quickly. The early years were blissful. Lavish trips to the Maldives, spontaneous helicopter rides to Vermont, private chefs, whispered promises over candlelit dinners. But slowly, the man I married started to shift. The workaholic excuse turned into weekends away. Then entire weeks. The kisses became pecks. Then nothing. He became addicted to power, control, and worst of all, admiration from anyone but me. I noticed it first at charity galas. The way his eyes lingered on interns and event hosts. The subtle way he belittled me in public, laughing off my opinions as cute or naive. But I stayed silent. Because that's what you do when your marriage is a brand, and your husband owns the spotlight. Until one afternoon, I found the receipts. Real receipts, hotels, dinners, and gifts sent to an address I didn't recognize. And names. Names I would never forget. One of them being her. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because I had my own plan. They say silence is a woman's sharpest weapon. That night after discovering the receipts, I said nothing. Not when he kissed me absent-mindedly before leaving for another board meeting. Not when he bought me a brand new Mercedes the next day, a guilt gift, as if polished chrome could distract me from the lipstick on his shirt collar. No, I smiled. I played the fool. But inside, I began to build my case. I remembered a lesson from law school: if you want justice, build it quietly. Let them hand you the rope. Frank wasn't just rich. He was reckless. He believed his name shielded him from consequences. That he could have it all: the obedient wife, the adoring mistress, and the public sympathy. What he didn't realize was that he'd married a woman who remembered everything. Every password he mumbled in his sleep. Every stock transfer he tried to bury. Every lie he thought I wouldn't trace. It started with his laptop. He used the same password for everything: Legend 2020. Fitting, for someone so obsessed with his own myth. I waited until he flew to Chicago for a conference. That night, I opened his email. Then his cloud files. Then, his private shared folder titled Other Life. It was all there. A signed apartment lease, under her name. Jewelry invoices. A bank transfer for $500,000 to a private account titled HB, her initials. Even a vacation itinerary for the Maldives, just us. Booked during the same week as our anniversary. I sat in our penthouse living room, hands trembling but heart ice cold. This wasn't carelessness. This was calculation. And if he wanted to play dirty, then I was ready to bury him in the same lies he built his empire on. People saw Olivia, the poised socialite. The quiet woman behind the mogul. What they forgot was that I gave up my career for this marriage. That I'd once interned at one of the most brutal family law firms in the city, where I drafted airtight prenups and dissected infidelity cases over burnt coffee and court filings. So, I called in favors. Quiet ones. My old professor still worked in litigation. A friend at the DA's office agreed to look into some anonymous tips about insider trading involving Edward Tech. And then I visited our family attorney. You see, Frank made me sign a prenup. Standard billionaire move. But what he never expected, what his arrogance made him overlook, was that I added a clause. One I'd buried on page 43 under joint fidelity protections. If proven unfaithful, he would lose his right to any claim to my future inheritance, and a percentage of his personal holdings would be moved into a charitable trust controlled by me. And thanks to his emails, receipts, and hotel footage, I had the proof. So when he returned from Chicago and announced that we'd be having a special dinner, I didn't flinch. I nodded sweetly. I told him I'd wear red, his favorite color. But I wasn't dressing up for him. I was dressing for war. The restaurant was candlelit, elegant, dripping with the kind of money that buys privacy. Frank ordered for both of us, like always. Wine, steak, and that smug glint in his eye. You look incredible, he said, watching me across the table. I've been thinking. It's time we talk about the future. I raised a brow. What kind of future? He smirked. An honest one. No secrets. No lies. He lifted his glass. To new beginnings. And then, just as dessert arrived, she walked in. I recognized her immediately. Heather. 24. PR intern turned soulmate. Wearing a dress I'd once worn to the Met Gala. She strolled toward our table with the entitlement of someone who thought she'd won. Liv, Frank said, standing, meet Heather. The woman I love. The one who makes me feel alive again. Gasps echoed from nearby tables. Heather extended her hand. I didn't take it. Instead, I reached into my clutch and pulled out the envelope. Gold-trimmed. Heavy. Legal. I slid it toward him across the linen tablecloth. Sign those. Before dessert. He paled. What is this? Divorce. With evidence. And attached penalties per clause 43C of our prenup. Heather blinked. Wait, what? I looked at her, straight in the eye. He forgot to mention the clause that ensures if he cheats, a third of his assets go to charity. Another third to me. And the rest? I smiled. Well, I guess that's for you two to fight over. Frank was silent. His hands shook. The waiter stood frozen beside our table. Enjoy your evening, I said, rising slowly. And Frank. Your board will be calling. I sent them a copy too. Then I walked out, leaving the man who tried to humiliate me drowning in his own champagne-soaked lies. Months passed. The headlines hit hard. Edward empire shaken by divorce scandal. Wife outsmarts billionaire in legal power move. Charity foundation receives $300 million in surprise donation. I didn't respond to interviews. I didn't need to. I used the money to start a legal fund for women trapped in manipulative marriages. I bought back the apartment my parents lost during the housing crash. I finally finished my law degree. And on the 1-year anniversary of that infamous dinner, I wore red. Not for war, but for victory.